Hello, everyone. Whoa. So I can be more moderated. How's everything going? Good? Nice. I'm glad you could join us for the last session of the day, and such a great turnout. Really appreciate it. So welcome to the session on managing and securing Apple devices, so iOS and macOS devices and apps, including Office 365 ProPlus, using Intune. My name is Ele Ocholi. I'm a senior program manager with the Intune team in Boston, or I should say Cambridge, Massachusetts. I've been working on this area for a couple of years now, and I'm really excited to finally be able to give this session out here in Amsterdam, in Europe. So pretty excited. And I'm going to be presenting with...
Hey everyone, I'm Tiffany Silverstein. I'm also an Intune program manager located out in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So I'm really excited to be here today. This is actually my first time speaking at Ignite, so I can't tell you how excited I am to talk iOS and macOS with all of you.
Nice. And so we only have an hour, so we're going to try and get into things. But before we get into the specifics of Apple devices, we're going to take a step back and just set the context here. What really motivates everything that we're doing in our team and in our division at Microsoft is all about helping you protect all your data while enabling all your customers to be as productive as they need to be. IT managers, CIOs, CISOs, everyone is less and less concerned about the nuts and bolts of controlling things and about just having the peace of mind to make sure the right people have access to the right data on the right devices. And that if for any reason any of those things are wrong, you have the tools that you need to adjust and ensure that you can keep everything protected. And so using our tools across all devices, Microsoft Intune and System Center Configuration Manager will give you all that you need in order to protect devices across all endpoints, so a unified endpoint management system, and to ensure that your users can get on board really quickly and you can react really quickly to what you need to in order to control these devices and to provide the service that you need and to meet all the security requirements that your security teams require of you as well. And so today, we will be focusing on iOS, macOS. First, we'll go through, from the MDM side, what we've been doing in various areas related to iOS, what's coming, what we've been doing related to macOS and what's coming there, and finally dive into APP, or the artist formerly known as MAM, for some of us. I can't stop using that name, and some of the cool stuff that has been happening there. And so yeah, let's get right into it. Tiffany's gonna walk us through iOS.
All right, so I'm really excited to talk about some things we've been doing over the past year, as well as what's coming over the next 6 months. But first, I'd like to give a baseline understanding of what we do on iOS. So we really cover a full spectrum of device management, all the way from app protection policies, which are the most lightweight form of management, up to your supervised lockdown devices enrolled via Apple's Business Manager or DEP enrollment programs. For app management, we focus primarily on data protection. So this is really about protecting your data inside of your apps on a device. We don't necessarily care about what else is happening on the device. We really are focused on that data. The user doesn't have to go through any sort of heavyweight enrollment mechanism, and these are personally owned devices. We next have our classic BYOD enrollment. This is a user-based enrollment in the iOS company portal application and allows you to do things like push down applications through VPP, store apps, line of business apps, as well as enable a bunch of different device configuration options. And then finally, our third option is supervised mode, iOS, DEP, or Apple Business Manager enrolled devices. These are the most locked down, and they can be used for scenarios such as kiosk mode devices in retail, or even things like the classroom devices in an EDU scenario. We can lock that management profile down to a device. What that really means is you have the confidence that your users cannot remove management or use this as a personal device at any time. And then finally, we have the ability to do some additional configuration. So we'll talk through what some of these new options that are coming out are today, but this is something where we really have the ability to do the full suite of things that Apple allows on their most corporate devices. So I'd like to jump right in and talk through a scenario for these DEP-enrolled corporate devices, which is DEP enrollment via user authentication. Now, you might know historically that we use the Apple Setup Assistant for DEP enrollment. Your user enters their username and password to the Setup Assistant before going to the Apple Store, entering their username and password again to get into the App Store, downloading the company portal, and then finally having to log in a third time to that company portal using their administrative credentials. This, we know, is not necessarily secure. Your password is sent with basic HTTP authentication, and we've seen a lot of issues come up around this. So now we've taken the abilities that Apple gives us and leveraged that to create a much better solution. And I'd like to take a look at that right now. So I'll be showing you user authentication via the company portal. So you start off, and if my demo will play, that is. All right, you start off with some simple setup assistant screens. You're used to seeing these from when you set up an iPhone or an iPad for the first time. You'll need to connect to Wi-Fi because what your device is going to do here is actually phone home to Apple. Then, using the profiles that you've set up both in Apple Business Manager or the DEP portal and what you've set up in the Azure console, you'll be able to notify the device that Intune is going to take over remote management. From here, Intune actually gets the ability to communicate directly with the device. So we send down the configuration profile that you've specified, which includes things like which setup assistant screens to show or hide right here. From here, you land back onto the home screen. Because we've deployed your company portal in single app mode, if the user tries to open up any other applications, they'll see this error message. So they know they can't do anything yet. And then as you see, we send down the company portal via VPP without the user having to sign in. Once that loads, it launches and the user is in single app mode. At this point, the user has to log in using their credentials, and that's the first time that they log in this flow. So you took those 3 logins from before and condensed that down into one that you can then use multi-factor auth with, and you can also do things like reset a password at the time of enrollment. So after this login, we just check in with the service and make sure that your device is fully managed and that it meets the compliance requirements that your organization has set. How are we feeling about this flow? Good?
So there's one thing with that. If it's running in single app mode and your Intune enrollment requires MFA, then you can't go to the authenticator.
So we are working on smoothing out this scenario and adding in some more features as we move forward. And that's something you're going to hear throughout the session. We've been putting a lot of investment into iOS and macOS management, but over the next 6 months to a year, you'll be seeing a whole lot more.
Just to repeat the question, he was saying that if you have a need for MFA on the same device that you're running this on, it cannot go to the Authenticator app. And so that scenario is one we've heard about and we're working on. That.
So to set up this flow, you'll have to do some prerequisites. Those mostly fall into the 2 buckets of the Apple side of things, where you'll need to set up an ABM or DEP and VPP account, and then the Intune side of things, where you'll want to configure that Apple enrollment profile. And the key things here is you'll want to use user affinity so we can connect the user to their device. You'll want to do company portal authentication, so you're not authenticating through that setup assistant flow. You'll install the company portal with VPP so the user is not prompted to enter their App Store credentials, and then you'll run that company portal in single app mode so you know that your user has no ability to do other things on the device until you're fully in this lockdown state. You have a few best practices you can take a look at here, but the primary one is authenticating with the company portal for that M365 modern auth, and then also documenting to your users that they'll need to sign into the company portal and that they'll want to set up their devices as new and restore different information after enrolling if needed. So we've walked through this flow a little bit, and you might be wondering what are some of the niches to enrolling it in your tenant. One thing we noticed is that a lot of our tenants want to use multiple tokens, which we now support in Intune. This is really helpful if you have a merger or an acquisition, or even if you just have separate business units that have different geolocations or cost centers for buying their devices. So we support multiple tokens, but we've now taken it a step further recently by introducing scope tags. Scope tags control which admins have read-write access at different levels. In the DEP scenario, we put this in on a token level, which is then inherited by profiles, and it's inherited by devices. So you can assign these scope tags to new tokens and existing tokens, and this is something we're doing across Intune. So right now, you can apply these scope tags in dep tokens, and you can also apply them to device configuration profiles and apps. And soon, this will be coming for VPP tokens. So for your corporate scenarios, you'll really be able to encapsulate in the console who has access to managing these devices. We go through a few Apple programs and tools to do this, but one thing that is important to note is that Apple is deprecating their dep and VPP portals in favor of Apple Business Manager, which is a unified approach to both. Naturally, Intune obviously supports Apple Business Manager, and we highly recommend that you upgrade today. So now we've talked enrollment, I'd like to discuss a little bit about what we've been doing in app deployment. Recently, we've introduced the ability to revoke all assigned licenses for an app, whether that's for an app, a device, or a token. This is really crucial in the case where you're using paid VPP licenses for apps, because you want to get the most out of those licenses, and users that shouldn't have access to these shouldn't be receiving these licenses. Next, I'd like to talk about some of the things we've done recently in device management. As you can see, this is a huge chunk of device configuration capabilities that we have recently added. So I'll talk a little bit later about wallpaper, which I'll actually be demoing for you. But what I really want to point out is that I'm sure within all of your organizations, you can see a use case for one or two of these. But to me, this list is really not about one or two settings. This, to me, represents the investment that we're putting into our Apple ecosystem. We want to make sure that Intune is your preferred vendor for MDM on Apple devices, and this is just the beginning of this journey. So these are things that have come out over this past year, but I promise you next year you'll be looking at an even bigger list. We've also added a bunch of other MDM capabilities, which include things like Zscaler remote access and iOS native mail OAuth support, which I'll talk a little bit about later. We also have the ability to delay iOS and macOS updates. This is something we've heard requests for from a lot of customers, and now we'll be able to delay updates from showing up onto your device for up to 90 days. This is really key when you have different LOB apps that you're not quite sure will necessarily work on the next version of iOS. It gives you some time to make sure everything's set up and your users have the best experiences on their corporate supervised apps. So without further ado, I'd like to show you iOS wallpaper. This is a huge, long-awaited customer ask. I've heard many scenarios ranging all the way from a floor device in retail to a classroom iPad, all the way to devices that are used in the cockpit of an airplane. So we really want to emphasize that you can push down your logo, but you can also push down other information to this device. So that could be something like where the device should be located or other identifying information. So I'll show you this demo now, and I think you're going to like it. You log into the admin console, and you'll start a device configuration profile. You'll set it up for wallpaper, and as you'll notice, you can set this to work on either the lock screen or the home screen. You can even do both. And from there, you'll get the file picker to upload an image. As you can see, this is a very classic iOS image. So now you can actually see what your newly Windows-ified iOS device will look like. Are we excited about this one? All right, glad to hear it.
Thank you, that's right.
Thank you.
Flexibility, that's all we're providing.
So next, we're also delivering the ability to do OAuth 2.0 enforcement for Exchange profiles. This is out today, and this really calls back to what we showed earlier in our dep flow for this need for modern auth for various things in your enterprise. We worked with Apple to deliver this, and we're really excited about the new security that we're providing. So I've talked a lot about things we've delivered. We've done some really cool demos, but I'm even more excited about what's coming because we have a lot of exciting things planned here. So two big things I'd like to call out here. We have an updated iOS 12.2 enrollment experience. Apple has decided that due to various phishing attacks that they're seeing around MDM profiles, including a few really high-profile ones you can read about online that we've seen lately, that users are often getting phished and they are really not knowing what they're doing when they're installing their management profile. So Apple's changing the flow a little bit to make it so that users have to more affirmatively take steps to install this enrollment profile. This is something we've been working with Apple with. We understand the security concerns, and we're making sure that your users will still have a very clear approach to how they need to enroll your device. You can read a little bit more about that online, but just know that as Apple updates their beta builds and as they're updating what's about to come out, we're also working to update that documentation and make sure that you feel supported really every step of the way. Another big thing that we're excited about is SMIME encryption support for Outlook on iOS. I know this has been a big ask, and this goes towards, again, making your Outlook more secure. Something else that I'm really excited about in the DEP enrolled case is this ability to apply iOS device naming templates. So as you can see, you start off with a profile for a DEP device, and this is where you'd go in to do things like set the setup assistant screens as well. And then you'll have the ability to apply a device name template to the device. So typically today, when you go into the console, all of your DEP enrolled devices will come in with the generic iPad or MacBook Air. But this actually gives you the ability to set up your own device name template that makes sense for your organization so that in the console, you know which device is which. So we have the ability to support two variables. The first is serial number. That's the serial number of the iPad or other iOS device. And then the other is device type, which is that classic iPad, MacBook Air. As you can see, we validate that there as well. And then the device actually gets renamed with this upon enrollment. So when you go into your device, will see this name that you've set up, and you'll also see it in the admin console. There's really no back and forth. There's not one name, one place, and one another. Something else that we're very excited about that we'll be releasing very soon is our improved company portal apps experience. So I'm actually going to take my iPad and give you a little demo of this. All right. As you can see, I have a beta version of the company portal app here. So I go in, and before we used to have the lady on the bench, and while we love her as a mascot, we thought we could deliver a much better apps experience. So now you go in, and on the front page, you see all of the apps that have been deployed for you by your IT admin. From here, we have featured apps that your IT admin can set, as well as showing a list of recently published apps and providing a bunch of categories that your IT admin can set up. So let's say that I want to use PowerPoint. I have the option to click on it from featured apps or recently published here, but I can also go in and search. As you can see, I've been looking up this a little bit, so I have a search history, which is a new feature here. And as you can see, I can search for Power in apps and ebooks, or just apps or ebooks. So having that separation of search, which we found was really valuable to our users in testing. And here we are. We can look for the app, and from here, install it, and really have that comfortable app experience that your users are used to. Okay. All right. So over here on the left, we have the previous lady on a bench. And on the right, we have this native web portal that you had to go in the company portal. It felt a little bit awkward in the past, but now we have this center experience where it all comes down in one. And something we've talked about at previous Ignites, and something we're also very excited about, is you still have the ability to brand all of this with your company logo, your company color, and your company name. So if you're excited to get your hands on this, I would highly recommend that you enroll in our iOS Company Portal TestFlight program. You can just email the address on the screen, and I'll send you a link. And you should know that these betas typically release about 1 to 2 weeks prior to our GAing. So they are the same as the release version for a few weeks a month. Apple will notify you every time a new beta is published, and it really gives us some helpful feedback from people using it just immediately after we're about to release. So some of you may know that we've been on this journey for privacy for the last 2 or 3 years. We've really been, sort of experimenting with different things to figure out what information is useful for users, as well as what's comfortable for IT admins. So on the left, you have what your company can see and do today. We've gotten some mixed feedback on this screen, and we really feel like it doesn't encapsulate all the ranges of experiences that you might have set up in your tenant. So now we're switching to a new version where we have a default list of things your IT admin can do. These are the simple things, and they tend not to scare users. But with the ability for you as the IT admin to edit the can't list, these are the things that really scare users, to show them what you actually can and can't do on their environment. We're also looking in the future to change this to a list that can be configured via Markdown, so you have more options in terms of the way that it displays on the screen. Something else that's coming that we've mentioned a few times is the restrictions. A few of them are moving to supervised only mode in 2019. This is a change led by Apple, so it's just something to be aware of as you look at your environment and the settings that you configure for both corporate and non-corporate devices. So with all of this, you can see we've been putting a lot of investment into iOS management. I'm so excited about the things that we've done over the past year, and I can't wait for what's coming next, and I hope you can too.
Thanks, Tiffany. Again, the theme is we're doing a lot, we're going to keep doing more, and we definitely want to keep getting your feedback on these things. But as we switch gears a little bit, we're going to focus now on our macOS side of things, and I'm going to walk you through some of what we've been doing and some of what's coming. But before we get into the details there, in terms of our management options when it comes to macOS, there are two broad flavors. We have the Intune managed side, which is about core modern management principles. Right now, there's a lot of basic platform MDM management scenarios, everything that's built into the MDM platform that Apple provides. So various security settings around password configuration, VPNs, Wi-Fi, things of that nature. Recently added the ability to do DEP, limiting access to Macs, to non-compliant Macs using conditional access, and so on, things of that nature. But on the other side, we found when we were talking to a bunch of customers about 2 or 3 years ago that Jamf kept coming up over and over. And we realized that Jamf is kind of like the configuration manager of the Mac world. They do everything under the sun, every little thing. It's not about modern management so much as modern management plus everything you can think of. And so we realized that there were still use cases for that, but they didn't have the benefits that came with compliance and conditional access with Intune and Azure AD, that is EMS. And so we worked with them to create a solution where Jamf can supply the information into Intune, and then Intune can calculate compliance, can set if a device is compliant or not with Azure AD, and then conditional access is available to all these Macs that are managed by Jamf. And so between these two solutions, you can cover every use case that you have. So just to talk a little bit more about what happens with the Jamf integration. First, you have the Macs that are managed by Jamf. And after the Jamf and the Intune service are connected properly with Azure AD, Jamf will install the company portal on a macOS machine and use it to register with Azure AD. Something to note here is even though the user is going through a registration with the company portal, Intune is not taking over management of that device. The device is still managed by Jamf. These are fully Jamf managed devices. And so Jamf is the one control on the device and controls everything there. The company portal is just used to ensure that the device gets registered with Azure AD. So after that is set, Jamf then collects information from these devices. It goes into the Jamf Pro service, and then the Jamf Pro service sends it over to the Intune service. At that point, the Intune service can then calculate compliance attributes. Some of that data can then be put together into a compliance report. And then it tells Azure AD this device is good to go or no, don't let this user through. Once Azure AD takes that into consideration with any other policies that you have set up in conditional access in AAD, for any good device, your user gets access to their Office resources and everything is good. For those users who, for whatever reason, they don't have the right compliance setup, for example, their password doesn't meet the company's requirements, they get blocked in the Office apps, for example. At that point, this is one of the key points of the integration. We will route users to our company portal website where we show them all the reasons that they may not be compliant. And this is how we do this across all platforms. And then right there, if they try to resolve their issues, we will launch the Jamf self-service, and you can configure that to easily give your end users a way to remediate themselves from their problems without necessarily having to call help desk, having to call all that. And so they're able to get access to the devices then fully. You can see all the devices that are managed by Jamf in the admin console as well. So we have a column for devices managed by Intune, which is just managed by MDM. And if it's Jamf, you'll see managed by Jamf. Our macOS compliance policies today include things around system integrity protection, setting the minimum, maximum OS, password configurations, as well as requiring encryption. We've recently added gatekeeper and firewall settings there as well. And over time, we'll continue to improve on what we provide there. I'm not going to walk through every single requirement here. You can reference this deck later, but try to make sure you get the latest and greatest. Because Jamf can be on-prem as well as hosted, with each version of Jamf, they are building more and more fixes for performance, for reliability, for different things when it comes to this integration. So I do recommend that you move to the latest versions of Jamf and the company portal when you are deploying this. So I just want to show you a little bit of the experience, especially for that bit I talked about, for the end user being remediated when they get blocked for any reason. Okay, so here we have the Azure Admin Console. When you go to the device compliance section, that's where you see all of this set up. You can go to policies, and you should define the compliance policies for your end users that you need. Under the properties, we already have a compliance policy set up. And in this case, we're going to zero in on password settings, because that's what we used for this demo. Here we have a macOS compliance policy where you require a password, and that password must be of 6 characters or longer. And we have an end user, Brad, who hasn't set that up. You can also go in for each compliance policy and see all the devices that haven't met this requirement. So in this case, we're going to go into device compliance for the end user laptop. And there, as an IT admin, you can see the reasons that the end user has not met compliance for any reason. And again, you can do this for all platforms that we support compliance on. So if we go to Outlook, which is a very common scenario, end user gets to their device, they want to access email, Office 365 data. So we're going to Outlook, we put in our end user name, password to make sure we can authenticate properly. If you have MFA set up, all that happens, and you get the screen, oops, you can't get access to information. That screen is standard across all conditional access solutions. And when you click the link to find out why you're blocked, it always routes you here to our company portal website, again, across all platforms. Once you're in there, it will show you the list of reasons why you are not compliant for any reason. Here, the user can go in and see, hey, okay, I don't have 6 characters. They could actually go fix this themselves. But one of the things that we have done here is once you click that Resolve Issues button, it launches Jamf automatically. You can imagine if they're not compliant for more complicated reasons. You can use Jamf and script solutions to help remediate them. In this case, we have a policy that will automatically fix the password for them in that case, but practically speaking, it depends on the reasons that they're compliant or not. We also recommend you always have the check settings policy, which is what tells Jamf to update the information on the device, send it to the Jamf Pro service, and then send that to Intune for compliance. The thing is, we rely on Jamf to send us any new information. So if you have a Jamf policy that is only checking the device once every 30 minutes, the user may have fixed it and there's no new information because Jamf itself doesn't know. Intune only knows what Jamf knows when it comes to this particular integration. So make sure that there are ways to get that information up into the Jamf service, because the Jamf service will then send it to Intune. And once the user is back in, the calculation of compliance happens and the user can get access to all their information as necessary. And so for Ignite, Brad is good to go. So yeah, I just showed you just one of those experiences for the end user in order to get remediated. But that is the power of the two products working together. Quite a few tips here. One or two things to note is that specifically really for password compliance, that first line is really important. We recommend you deploy a configuration profile in Jamf for every compliance policy item that you have set up in Intune. Now, for all the other ones, Intune will just calculate with whatever information Jamf provides. But because of how Apple has created password compliance and password policies, you should make sure you set up a corresponding password policy in Jamf. And that enables Jamf to get the right information to send to Intune. Apart from that, we realized that with a lot of customers who are going through POCs now with this, that a lot of devices may get lost in the shuffle of enrolling with Jamf. Because, again, we rely on Jamf to tell Intune when to add a device or take it out. And so we've provided ways to clean that up, but try to make sure that you remove devices through proper unenrollment pathways in the Jamf console. And that way, Intune always receives the message to remove that device from the system as well. So coming back to the Intune side of the world and Intune management, we continue to build more and more capabilities in there because we have heard from a huge chunk of our customers as well that they want a better sense of UEM. That is, there are certain few modern principles that they need in their solution before they can fully deploy out. And so that is the road that we're going on and we continue to work through. We've provided things around firewall, security and privacy, restrictions, changing the device name, data protection. So that is, if a device goes out of your system, you can easily remote wipe it, remote lock it, where you enter a PIN. And so the only person that can unload it is the person that has the correct PIN in order to not lock it or erase it. We added support for DEP as well as user-approved MDM enrollments, which we'll talk about a bit more. And then one of the bigger ones we added last year was app management, two big fronts, for Office 365 and for line of business app deployments. So now as we talk about app deployment, I will take a step out to just do a big call out here for Office 365, because you're going to hear that throughout Ignite, and you continue to hear it over and over around the great solutions that we're providing you all when it comes to Microsoft 365 and especially the productivity part of Office 365. We really recommend that you move to using Office 365 as soon as you can. There's just a lot of great functionality that comes here. Each user gets to have 5 licenses to use across PCs and Macs, another 5, well, same license but 5 devices, another 5 for just mobile devices. And Office 365 is it's always up to date. Every month we're shipping new things, we're getting it there. And for those organizations where monthly cadences are just too much, there is another branch where it's only updated every 6 months and it's cumulative. And it's maintained in terms of supported for another 6 months. So that means you have 3 options for updating. You can take a new functionality every month, you can take it every 6 months, or you can take it every year. And you can have it deployed to your users every year while you're testing every new thing that comes out every month. So we give you flexibility there as well. But we really recommend that you start using that. So what's the difference between this and all the other standard Office 2010, Office, things of that nature? Well, in the last decade or so, every 3 months, like clockwork, Microsoft releases a new version of Office with added functionality, Office 2013, Office 2016. And end of last year, there was this big, huge hoopla with Office 2019. And so we are continuing to add value for the standard single license versions of Office. But is it really the best one, even though it just came out for your organization? Not quite. The best is Office 365 because this is continuously being updated. You get a whole bunch of intelligent features as well. 1 terabyte of data that comes with your OneDrive per user and SharePoint environment. And so we know for some particular organizations, there may be reasons why you can't move forward to a fully cloud connected interface, which this requires. But for everyone else, we do recommend that you move to Office 365 ProPlus to get all the benefits, including the intelligent services and things I've spoken about already that comes with this cloud-connected version, and not stick with Office Perpetual. So I'm going to climb back into the Intune world now. And for Office 365, as well as standard line of business app deployments, we added that last year. So with the Add App functionality in Intune, you can go and select Office 365 for Windows and/or Mac. There are ways to do it for all platforms built in as a first-party app, as well as the line of business app. Now, I'll focus a little bit of line of business app deployments here, because in this case, you need to download a tool from GitHub, which is our wrapping tool. If you're familiar with APP or MAM, there's a wrapping tool for iOS there as well. And so we have a precedent for that kind of experience. So once you download that tool, you run it with your PKG, and then you can upload the Intune Mac app into Intune, and you can deploy it to end users. I have a link to a blog post here, where we have a blog post that walks you step by step through the whole experience. It's one of those things that we are going to continue improving over time with better messaging back and things of that nature. But any feedback that you have on this will be very much appreciated as well. So let me show you what that experience looks like. So here we have the macOS company portal, which you may or may not be already familiar with. Standard areas for contacting IT, device management, and here we have the apps area. So for this end user, we have a bunch of apps already deployed to them as available. Office is one of them, as we have there. We also have various apps for enabling their productivity in their environment. I don't have a picture of it here, but we do support dark mode on Mojave as well, so if that's what your end users prefer. You can search similar functionality that Tiffany demonstrated on that was coming with iOS. You can search for different apps as you need. Web apps will be shown here, and so on and so forth. So if we go back, in this case, I'm going to walk you through installation of Ava Security. So this is one of the security products that Alpine Ski House is deploying to their end users. So the end user just goes to their company portal and clicks install. This triggers the service to send an install message to the device with this PKG. And then we start showing you the status in the company portal. And it's downloading and then different steps there. At this point, I do want to do a little call out to the web portal. So that is the company portal website. For all platforms, this is supported. So we do have a native SSPs or native company portals, but everything you can do, you can easily go there to do as well. We show you similar status messages of what's happening on the platforms. And in some cases, there's functionality in there that is not in others when it comes to being able to remote lock a device you can't find or things of that nature. You can select the app itself, and there we also show you the status of what's happening with the application. So while that continues to happen on the end user's machine, sorry, you can go to the home page, but if you see back in either applications or, in this case, the menu, the application is already installed and is good to go. And then the service is trying to collect data back on what's been installed or not. In this case, the machine is protected and they are ready to go. So that's one of the scenarios that we enabled last year, which customers have been asking for a lot. Something else we did was macOS DEP. Again, Apple's mindset is for corporations and corporate devices, you should go in the DEP direction. And so we've provided this. One of the bigger asks is, okay, you've given this to us, okay, when are you going to give us the MFA experience there? And we're here, and we're working on that now, planning and designing and walking through what we need to do there. Approved management profiles. So Apple introduced this with, I think, the last version of 10.13, just before Mojave, and went big with it. The idea is that similar to iOS, where for BYOD or user-owned devices, they should have the final say before MDM can do certain things on their devices. On macOS, though, previously you could, which is what we did and a lot of MDM providers did, was automatically install the MDM profile, which is really what sets up the relationship to control the device. You could do that in the background. Now, Apple requires that users go through to the Settings app and click Verify. So that picture there on the MDM profile. For most controls, it didn't change much, but Apple's mindset was anything that had to do with antivirus programs, security type deals will now be gated on enrollments that had been user approved. So in our end user enrollment experience, we now added a page to make sure they confirm their device management. And we're going to do some improvements on that over time. But at least now it tells them what they need to do. Unfortunately, Apple doesn't let us link directly to the management profile, so we have to link to the settings app and just give them some instructions on how to go there and approve it. In terms of getting access to early builds or early versions of the company portal, we actually use the exact same process and behind-the-scenes CDNs as the Office builds themselves. And so using Microsoft Auto Update, which a lot of Microsoft apps have onboarded onto, you can select to get Insider builds. We are right now on the Office Insider slow path. And so you can just make sure you're on that, and you will get, similar to iOS, our builds before they go out into production, about a week or two beforehand. So that's everything we've done in the last year. I'm really excited to talk about what's coming out in the next couple of quarters. And it doesn't stop here. There are newer things that we keep talking to other customers about planning for. But the biggest ask across everyone I've spoken to for the last 2 years really has been, okay, when can I just at least push a file vault configuration? The conditional access today allows you to require encryption, so that's a way to protect your devices today. We have worked with customers to fashion the file vault configuration profile to use our custom configuration path, so that's always a way to get there. But we will be in the next quarter coming out with a file vault profile in order for you to escrow those keys back into the service so that you always have access to the keys and the end user has access to the keys as well. And I'll be showing you that UI in a second. We're also going to be working through adding more controls for the skip and setup assistant screens, OS updates, as well as app management. So we're going to support VPP macOS apps because that's where Apple is going when it comes to app support and MDM. So as I mentioned, for personal escrow keys, we're going to support a way for you to enable this. And the key thing here is that the keys will be escrowed back into Intune, and IT admins and end users will both have access to these keys. And so this really fulfills a lot of the requirements when it comes to encryption and making sure you always have access to these devices, whether the user leaves or not. Kernel extensions, another big one that has popped a lot. All the user-approved MDM I was talking about before, this is one of the reasons for it. So with kernel extensions, you can imagine that there's a class of apps that needs access to very low-level things in the OS. And so Apple provided a pop-up that comes when these apps try to install. Warning the end user and say, hey, let them through or not. To let them through, go to Gatekeeper, do this, do that. And a lot of customers don't want to depend on the end user making such a choice. So with the kernel extensions profile, you can whitelist a set of apps that will automatically be installed without end user interaction. And this will only work for devices that are user-approved MDM. Now, the good thing about trying to use DEP sooner or later is because the DEP flow automatically grandfathers in a user approval, any devices that are already user-approved or that are already enrolled don't need to go back and approve the MDM profiles if you update from, let's say, 10.12 to Mojave or things of that nature. So this will be coming out next quarter as well. And then we have macOS software updates as well for DEP devices. And this is really cool because now you can control when you push out updates to such devices. We released the ability to set restrictions to delay for 90 days. Updates that are coming through, but this will allow you effectively say, end user, you're not going to trigger those updates. We're going to trigger it when we're ready. And this overrides those settings. We also have reporting for the different types of updates that they are. So whether it's critical updates, firmware updates, configuration profile updates, and so forth. And so again, this is all rolling out in Q2, Q3, and we'll be adding more over that time. So I'm really hoping that you guys could try this out and let us know how it's going and just provide us more feedback so that we can keep targeting the top asks, because these are the top asks that we're really focusing on, to get you to that point that you can fulfill all your modern management needs using Intune. So that's been a lot so far. You guys still with me? Yeah, still with us? Nice, appreciate that. Now we're going to talk about APP, or many, you may still know it as MAM. The different options there and some cool stuff that's coming out. Just by show of hands, how many people here are using MAM or app protection policies already in their environment? Okay, so that's, let's say 20% maybe? 20, 25? Cool. This is a really great solution for a lot of companies. You're familiar with MDM. We've been talking about MDM, where you enroll, the end user enrolls a device, and you can control so many things about that device. We found that there were many customers whose end users were fighting hard, fighting back. They were like, you know what? I am going to be less productive because I refuse to enroll into anything. We continue to do work like we did in that privacy screen to help guide them. Actually, when we introduced that what IT can see or do, we saw a market uptake in the number of users that can enroll devices, that successfully enroll their devices. And so that's kind of why we keep it there, because we're trying to do everything we can to make people more comfortable with this concept. But we also listen to our customers and realize that what you really, really care about is your company data, where it is and who has access to it, less the rest of the device. And so we came up with app protection, mobile application management app protection. And so the big thing was to enable users successfully use their Office apps on devices that were not necessarily enrolled. So whether they were enrolled or not, we had Office apps that were still split when it comes to where your end user accounts were versus your company accounts. And in those company accounts, we provided all kinds of protection policies there. So you can ensure data is encrypted at rest. You can ensure that the user must have a PIN set before they get access. So before the app launches, they get access to information. You can prevent what we call data leakage. So you don't want a user to copy a string from your email into, I don't know, Notes app or some other application that is outside the protected applications that you want. But you still want them to have freedom to be productive once they are within that gated area of all the applications that you have provided. And so the final lever was to be able to ensure that no matter what happened, if somebody left the organization or things like that, you could wipe all the data the moment the app is running and tries to connect to anything. And we provided all of that. We did it in such a way that it doesn't matter what MDM you're using. We would prefer that you use Intune for all your MDM needs. But in the cases for different reasons why you don't necessarily do that, we will work with all other MDMs as well. So this sits on top of whatever the device is doing, independent of what the device is doing. We will protect the data within these MAM-enabled apps. So some of the big cases, as I mentioned, is BYO-type scenarios. Users are bringing their own devices, and they don't want to enroll for different reasons. Or you have a consultant who's using the same device all across a whole bunch of companies with different MDMs, different things. You just want to make sure that whatever account they have that they're using for your work is protected. So how do you enable this for your applications in your environment? There are three broad ways. One is using our wrapping tool. As I had mentioned previously, we have a wrapping tool for wrapping applications. And so any application that is already built, you can just take it through this process. It's primarily targeted towards your own applications, line of business apps. The best solution is to use the Intune APP SDK, which has the ADA library built in for authentication and modern auth and all that, and has the full APP feature or app feature functionality built in for both store or line of business apps. For those using Xamarin, which is a great tool there, we also provide the SDK bindings there that you can use for, again, store and LLB apps across platforms. The main thing I want to call out on this slide is for under developer tools and sample, if you want developer tools and sample apps, we have a whole bunch of you there. So we're there to take you step by step through this process to get your apps enabled in such a way that the ecosystem continues to grow. We're getting many, many asks for a lot of partners, partly because their end users, are telling them, hey, please go enable your apps for Intune MAM, because we want to ensure that secret enclave has everything, all the apps that end user needs, and is protected from everything else. So just to show you what this looks like, in this case, we have line of business app that's been written and a string there that can be protected by Intune. In this case, the app is not yet protected, so the user can launch it, do what they need, and paste the information into the Notes app. No protection. They can add information in and out, and so this is an example of data leakage, as we say, insecure. So now, once you've wrapped your app, or you've incorporated even better the SDK, when a user launches it, you've added different policies. So one of the policies, for example, is you must have a PIN set specially for this app before you can use it. And once you get in there, yes, you can still copy and paste and be productive with the string. But in this case, if you go to the Notes app, which is outside your company set of apps, and you try and paste something, it gives you a message that says, nope, your organization doesn't allow this. Now, if you go to an Office app that they need also for their productivity, and they paste it in there, it's pasted fully. And so here you have an example of how, yes, once you're outside, you have peace of mind that your data is not going to get leaked to other applications. But once you're inside, the user can continue to be as productive as they need to be. And so this is a great solution that I encourage those of you who haven't tried it yet to test it out. Go show your security teams that this will actually help give you more peace of mind as you enable certain scenarios. You can pick the kinds of apps that your users may need, whether it's outside the organization or on their personal devices, and really bring home how great this solution is for your environment. A lot of tips and tricks here, but I'm not going to go through everything. Things for you to think about is the selective wipe, that's the last line. The interval is every 30 minutes. And so what we're saying is fundamentally, if a user leaves and you trigger selective wipe, within 30 minutes, you can have peace of mind that the moment after that they launch the app, it will automatically be wiped if it connects to the internet. Now, if they never connected to the internet, it's actually configurable how long you want to allow offline access. By default, we set it to 12 hours, but you can go in and bring that down to a smaller unit as you need. You get to decide how long offline access is allowed before the system automatically performs its own selective wipe because it can't connect to the internet. So we give you multiple tools in order to have peace of mind there. So that's all about what's there already. One of the things that we're really excited to talk to you about is what's coming when it comes to Intune managed mobile browsers. So Tiffany is going to bring us home.
All right. So as you can see, the MAM solution is a great choice for your end users. It's actually one of our fastest growing products, and people are constantly excited about it. But in the past, MAM often came with a managed browser. And the managed browser is manageable, and it's corporate only, but it's really designed for that narrow use case of a work-only browser that has to be locked down. As we know, it has a bit of a basic browsing experience. However, with Microsoft Edge managed by Intune, you have fast page rendering, a rich browser feature set, and then really the cornerstone of the solution, which is the dual Microsoft IDs. So this is the ability, just like you have in Outlook and all your O365 apps, to have your work account and your personal account. It has managed browser parity and more. So this is really the best browser that you can possibly use, both for personal and work. We truly separate your personal and your work data, whether that's things like your browsing history, cookies, passwords, even the things on your clipboard. Those are containerized within the actual application itself between your personal and your work accounts. So one scenario we found this is really helpful in is the case of having a blocked website. I'll give you a little look at that right now. So let's say your end user wants to go to Facebook. They're in their corporate account, and they want to just check up on their status, talk to their friends. They actually are blocked, but then they have the ability to switch over into their personal context to do this. So they're not going to be copying and pasting all of your confidential data into a tweet, but they are going to be able to go and access their personal things in this browser. And what we've heard from our private preview is this really makes our customers comfortable with actually using allow and block lists, because their users will still use this managed browser. They still love the experience, but you have the ability to really keep your corporate data separate and protected. We find this has a lot of the traditional value for enterprises that the managed browser did when it comes to MAM protection, enabling EMS conditional access policies, having single sign-on, and things like personal or app proxy. But we also add in the ability to have managed favorites, a managed home shortcut, block sites, and that very key personal and work identity. So something we know is that our end users love Edge. It's out today, and in the App Store on iOS, it has a 4.2 star rating, which, as you know, is very high. We have people saying that it is really the browser they've been waiting for, and now that it's Intune managed, enterprises will love this too. So I bet you're wondering when you can get your hands on Intune Managed Edge, and I'm happy to announce that we will be releasing it to GA at the end of this month. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm excited too. I've been using it myself.
Nice. So yeah, thanks for sticking with us through this whole thing, and it's the end of the day. Again, we just want you to go away from here thinking and remembering that the Microsoft Intune solutions and Configuration Manager are what you need for your complete unified endpoint management. We've been doing a lot with platforms. We want you, and we're going to keep doing a lot. Please get your hands on these things and try them over the next couple of months as they come out, especially on the macOS management side. We want more feedback, and we want to make sure that we're delivering what you need there. We are the best-in-class solution for deploying Office 365 ProPlus deployments across all your platforms. And if you want to see more and hear more about everything Intune is doing across the board, there's a session tomorrow morning at 9:30 that covers what's new in Intune across all platforms. And so we definitely recommend that you make that as well. So at this point, if you have a few questions, please let us know. We'll be at booth for a couple of hours tomorrow as well. But again, thank you. Amsterdam has been great so far. I look forward to more.